This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you, Carol. Okay, ladies, everybody have their handout for today?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Okay, this covers, as it says, it's Maxi sewing techniques, but it's also, it uses the Maxi sewing stitches. That's the one category we're going to start off with. That's number 5.4, and those are the stitches that you see on my screen. And these are ones that you have to pay attention to as you're stitching them. And it's, as I was practicing them, I had to remind myself to not watch what the needle was doing, but watch where my foot was in relation to the line I had drawn on my fabric. So all of these stitches are stitched out with lines that temporary lines that you draw on your fabric. So let's start off on page 1. And we should be in sewing mode, and we want to be in category 5.4, and we want to select stitch number 12.
Judy,
and close our menu. Yes.
I'd like, let me leave the meeting and see if I think maybe when I came back in, I selected don't use the camera maybe. Does that make sense?
That could be.
So I'm going to leave the meeting and come right back in. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay, I'll do that now. Thanks.
Okay. All right. So when it comes up on your screen, it's going to show you, as usual, multiple repeats of the stitch. But one of the tools that we can use to make sure that we keep our stitches in line as we stitch them out is to use the stitch repeat function down here, and to set it on single stitch program with a number of 1, so it only stitches 1 repeat of that stitch at a time. And that would give us an opportunity to realign our fabric if we needed to keep those stitches in line. So this is my sample that I stitched out, and it's pretty much in line. And as we go along, we will, the instructions will tell us how to position our foot to start off with. If you look at your screen, and I don't know how well this will show up. Where am I? Okay. There is a little green cross right at the top of the stitch up here. That tells you where the stitch pattern is going to begin stitching. So it's not going to begin stitching at an end of the stitch. It's going to begin stitching at that, where that little green cross is. And that can be very helpful. So we're going to stitch out on fabric that has a line drawn on it, and we're going to put tearaway stabilizer behind our fabric. On a lot of these, she has said to use Stitch in the Ditch stabilizer, which is a very lightweight tearaway stabilizer, but just regular tearaway stabilizer is what I'm using. So that's what you can use too. So it says on page 2, number 5 at the top, it says place your fabric, and it should say and stabilizer. under the foot with the needle and the center of the foot on the line. Okay, I'm going to set my machine for needle down, and I can see my needle didn't quite come down in the middle of my line, so I'm moving it over a bit. And then, because I have kind of futzed around with my needle position, I'm going to touch the pattern stitch restart button up here right next to needle down to make sure I'm on the first stitch of the pattern. That's just a little bit of insurance to make sure that you're getting started at the right place. All right, so I have my number 8 foot on, and the middle of the foot is centered on the line. And I'm going to use the start stop button on the machine. I also have slowed my machine down to a speed of 40%, so it doesn't go crazy and I get excited about trying to keep the fabric where it should be. So it's better to sew these slowly and to use your start stop button instead of your presser foot. So this is how this works. The fabric is going to move side to side as well as backward and forward. And it's my job to keep that line parallel to the edge of the foot. I'm not guiding the fabric, I'm just keeping it in place. And I want to make sure that it stays straight with the edge of the foot. So when the edge of the foot comes far enough that I can see the line, it needs to be even with that, not even, it needs to be parallel to the edge of the foot. And this is what I was talking about. We're so used to looking at what the needle is doing. When you're sewing these kinds of stitches, you really need to be watching where your line is in relation to the foot. The needle position will take care of itself and the sewing part. Okay, so now when it came back and stopped, it stopped at the center position, and mine is just a hair past to the left side of my line, so I could carefully move my needle up and then reposition it so it comes down right on my line and stitch out a second one. And when I was stitching them out yesterday, it was the same thing. And so either it doesn't take much to get the fabric out of position if you're holding it too tight or in any way pushing or pulling on it. It takes a bit of practice to get used to not helping the fabric like we sometimes are used to. And you can see the advantage of only stitching out one repeat at a time, because that gives you the opportunity to reposition your needle as you need to. And I don't know if I can sneak, I can't. But come on. That's you can see right here that my thread is just barely to the side of my line. So it actually came over just a little bit. And if I were being very precise, I would again move my needle to the middle of the line to stitch an additional one. Questions? Make sense?
That line idea is awesome. I would never have thought of that. Thanks. Works.
It's, you know, there's no way in the whole world otherwise to get them to line up right. And there are, you know, why are you being difficult up here? Sorry, my thread is being, no, it's operator error, sorry. So if you have some fabric and stabilizer and a marking pen, one thing I will say about these is that I would like this stitch to be more dense. However, on any of these Maxi stitches, you cannot adjust the density. So whatever density is set in the machine is the density it will stitch out, and you don't get an opportunity to adjust that like you can on some of the other stitches. All
I
right.
wonder, what if you used a smidgen heavier thread? Would that really ball it up, or have you tried that?
No, that would work. That would help.
Just a thought. Okay, I might try that.
No, that's a good thought, Sandy.
Thanks.
A good thought. The heavier thread would be good. All right. So if you'd like to try that out, let me know that if you're trying it out. If not, then we will, or if you try it out, tell me when you're finished and we will proceed. All right.
I tried it out. I did. And it
And
worked.
it worked.
Yep.
Good. Have you done this? Have you tried these kind of stitches before?
Don't think so.
Okay.
No.
Well, there are
No, I
some.
have not. No, I haven't. That's why the line was a great idea.
Okay. Well, there are some really, really pretty stitches in this category. What are you doing there? Let me back off so we can see them. We did number 12, okay? And it is 25 millimeters long. If you just go work your way through the stitches, like number 1, it's 90 millimeters long. So it's very long. And it's also very wide. It's 40. And you notice that you could change the length of it. Let me close my screen so you can see. You could change the length of it, and then your flowers would get kind of squashed. Oh, where's my stitch repeat? Oh, because I changed stitches, it gave me that. And I could narrow it up also. And it's individual on the stitches as to what adjustments they're going to allow you to do. For like instance, this one will let you make it longer, but it won't let you make it any wider. All right. So if we go and look at some of the others, these are just beautiful stitches. This one intrigues me. It looks, I like Jacobean things, and this one looks very Jacobean to me. The project that accompanies this lesson uses stitch number 8, which is a very pretty stitch. It's just an outline though. This is what it looks like. So sometimes you need to think about what kind of fabric you're going to put these on if they have just the outline stitches, because if you put them on a print, they're going to disappear. They just won't show up.
I have a dumb question. How do
Okay,
you
I'll
only
try not to
have
give you a dumb answer.
how do you only have one design up? Mine's I have the whole string. How did you get just the one?
Remember this thing down at the bottom, the
Oh,
stitch,
creator. Oh, stitch. I did stitch repeat.
and then you have to
Okay.
hit single stitch program.
Oh, gee. Thank you.
No
Thanks.
problem, Sandy. No problem. Okay, so, let's try out a different one. Let's try out that number 8 one. It says, and it's in your instructions too, on the bottom of page 2. Let's see. Oh, it's on number 8. It doesn't have a very big explanation of it, but you'll notice that on the little green cross, if you look, it's not in the center of the design. Basically, it's over to the left-hand side. So the instructions are going to tell us to put the center of the foot on the line, but look where the needle is. The needle is not on this in the center of the foot. It's over to the left-hand side. Can you see that? So we would put the center of the foot on the line, but actually the design is going to start to the left of that. And another suggestion that is in that same step, the tip. If you use this foot.
Hi, it's Judy. I want to say hi. I want to say hi.
Yeah. What, honey?
What? Where are you?
Where am I?
I just wanted to tell you that I can't stay because I got the bad leg, but I'm here and I just wanted to say hi to you today. Okay, that's hi.
Hi, Liz.
I'm
Good
sorry
to
about
see
your
you.
leg, but thanks for coming in and saying hi to us.
I wanted to say, yeah, they did ultrasound yesterday, and I see the doctor tomorrow. The whole leg is a big mess, and my daughter had to come, so she's here. And I just wanted to say hi, let you all know I'm still alive.
Well, we're glad to know. Thanks for checking in.
Okay, and I got all the instructions. I printed them out. Okay?
We'll keep you and your leg in our prayers.
Yeah.
Amen.
I'm getting, the leg is a lot better. It got so bad I couldn't even use it. And it's all black and blue and swollen. I mean, I did
Well,
nothing.
I hope they get it fixed for you.
They will. Okay, bye.
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 Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Okay, that was sweet. All right, so if you have this multi-line decorative foot, is what they call it. It's commonly known as the airplane foot. It can be a big help. You just have to, it does not have a very deep, what I call gully in the bottom of the foot. The number 8 foot has a deeper one, and the number 2A foot has an even deeper one. So if you're doing something that has satin, really dense satin stitches, this foot can kind of hang up on them. So the stitch that we are doing right now is just outline stitches, so it's going to be fine to use this. And as I stitch, you will see the advantage of having this clear foot to be able to see your line no matter where it is, rather than when we had the number 8 foot, when it was underneath the metal part, you weren't quite sure where it was. So sometimes for, these maxi type stitches, this clear multi-line decorative foot can be a large help. So we're going to start with our needle or our line lined up with the middle of the foot, and there are red lines on the foot, one on this little finger out here and one right back at the back here, so we can line that up on the line, but our needle is over to the left. So, excuse me, camera. Let me move that. There you go. Let's see if I can get it so you can see the line. There we are. Okay, so see, it started way over to the left. But as it moves, you have the advantage of being able to see the line through the foot. And as you're sewing, if you notice that your line is just a little bit crooked, you can gently maneuver it so it ends up back being straight. So again, now, since this one started over on the left, it's going to stop on the left of your line. But when your foot is down, the center of your foot should still be on your line when your design finishes, which this one did. Okay.
Humongous. I did it. Humongous.
You did it?
I did 2 of them. I was watching you did 2 of them. And it's
Okay.
big.
It is big.
Do you have this multi-line foot?
I do, but I didn't have it out, or I'd try. Maybe I'll try to find it. We going to use that again on something else?
Yeah, we can.
Well, I mean, I do have that. I just have it in my drawer.
Okay, that's fine. It's up to you.
Could you please remind us the buttons? So the one that looks like the stitch repeat is the way we stop it at the end of the design, right? Or the end of the stitch. Like when we have start stop.
And then at the end of the stitch pattern, yes, stitch repeat. And the
then
single.
Go
ahead.
And then what is the one next to it that's like a stitch on top and then 3 stitches below? What does that one do?
Where are you talking about?
On the
oh, that's your tie off. You're talking about the buttons up here.
Yes, it's talking about the buttons, right?
This sets you, okay, this is your needle down.
Right.
This one is go to the beginning of your stitch pattern. Like if you stopped in the middle of this stitch you were here and you stopped. Well, you can't see, can you? I'm sorry. If you were in the middle of this stitch and you
Right.
stop, say right here,
Yeah. Yes.
but you wanted to restart at the beginning of the pattern, then you would use this button. This will take you back to the beginning of the pattern.
Oh, okay. That's not what I want then. So what do I want when I just want to complete the stitch and then stop?
Then you're gonna, you can touch your scissors.
Okay.
And
How
it
about,
will,
go ahead.
if you want to just complete and then stop, then you're
Yes.
gonna set over here on your screen. You're gonna go to stitch repeat. And you're gonna
Yeah.
set it for single stitch program.
But you have to do that ahead of time. So like on the Epic, you just push the
No,
stop
you
button.
can do
and
it
then,
as you're sewing.
okay.
You can do it as you're sewing. If you wanted to do two of the flowers,
Well, no,
and
because
so
I didn't have a lot of room. So I was like, oh, I better stop it at the end of this. Like I do that a lot where I stop at the end of
okay, well when you're stitching out your last one, touch your stitch repeat, you buckethead. Touch your stitch repeat and touch your single stitch program, and it will finish that repeat and stop. It
okay.
won't tie a knot or anything. It'll just stop.
Now, if I do the tie the knot, will that finish it'll just tie the knot right there, won't it?
Yes, that's an immediate tie off.
Yeah, so it won't finish the stitch. But the
No, ma'am.
cut will finish the stitch and cut. Is that right?
The scissors will finish the stitch, tie a knot, and cut.
Okay, good. That's probably what I need to do. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
And now Junior is being ornery again. Okay. Now. All right. Sorry. I maneuver this thing too much and it comes unscrewed. All right. Sorry. Okay. So those are, that's the lesson part of the officially called Maxi stitches. On page 3, we're talking about monograms. So monograms are in a category of their own, and that's number 7. And these are all capital letters. 7.1. 7.2 is a scripty set of uppercase letters. There aren't any lowercase letters as monograms. But if you really wanted to build a monogram, you could adjust the size of the letters and use the sequence creator function to put the letters together. So in the lesson on page 3 under number 1, it asks us to use section or category 7.1 and select number 13, which is M. And I think it's a pretty one. So I stitched out an M and then I stitched out a J. And it's very helpful when you're doing something like this if you draw a grid on your fabric. So I drew a 1/2 inch grid and I found it helpful when I stitched it out. So I'm going to select the M and I'm going to turn on my stitch repeat because I only want one of them, my single stitch program. Well, I don't need to. It comes up as a single letter. It does not put more than one on your screen. Okay. You do want your needle down. And again, I'm going to use the multi-line decorative foot as they have as a tip under number 3. And again, the needle is off to the left of the foot, but I'm going to position it on, so the middle of the foot is on a line. Let's see. Let me start that over. Let's see. Okay, Lee, I'm going to do my restart pattern here because it went the way I wasn't paying attention to.
Okay.
So I'm going to use that to get me back to the beginning of my letter. This is a perfect example of how to use that. Okay, because I didn't look to see that my little cross is at the bottom of the left-hand leg of the M. All right. So I'm going to, okay, so I'm lined up and when you've got a grid, then you can also use these little cross marks on the lines on this foot to help you stay square as well as straight.
Judy, I switched to that foot, and so I put because of that little thing on the left, that goes under.
Okay, Sandy, go ahead.
Oh, I try. So I put because of that little ditty, instead of putting the needle in show me what. Oh, okay. Okay. I didn't do it. I see what you did. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. I put the center marks on the foot, which
That's
is
what I
this
wanted to
one
do.
here
Okay.
and the one on the little finger.
Yes.
Those went on the line.
Oh, okay. That made sense. I didn't pay attention. Okay. I'll do that now. Thanks.
Sure. Let me know when you're finished. Is anybody else sewing out samples?
I am.
Good. And try different letters. Try your letters. So many times, especially in script letters, I don't like the J's that they do, but this J is to me recognizable as a J rather than, is it a J? Is it an I? What is it really? We could leave that one on. Okay, how's it working?
It's interesting. So if you so you want that middle. Okay, yeah, I see. When I look on the screen, that's interesting how you line it up, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Now, did you say you did a 1-inch grid? Is that what your grid was?
No, it's a 1/2 inch, Lee.
1/2-inch grid. Okay, I'm writing it on here. I don't have time to do it, but inch grid.
Because these letters are just barely over a 1/2 inch. The main part of them is just barely over a 1/2 inch tall. So. All right, are you ready to proceed?
Sure, either way.
Okay. Sandy, you okay?
Yes.
All right.
Yes, I am. I'm ready.
Okay, great. Page number 4. We're going to talk about the quilting stitches, and that is category 2 in our stitch menu here. All right, and we want to go to category 2.2. The first category is what is called hand look quilting stitches, and they are unique in that they use the transparent thread to create that look. And we may get into those sometime in the workbook here. But for right now, we're going to go into the stippling stitches. And she says long touch number 11 to select it, but just if you tap it, it selects itself. You don't need to long touch it. And then again, you want to draw some straight lines on your fabric. And for my samples, we want the stitch to repeat. In this case, we don't want to do single repeats. We want to go ahead and do a whole line of our stitches. And these stitches are made to nest next to each other so that you don't have a lot of extra spaces in between. So because I'm stitching lines, repeating lines, and it's important that I start at the same place so that the stitches fit together as they were designed to do, I like to draw a horizontal line as well as my vertical lines, so that gives me a place to start each time so that my stitches fit together like they should. All right, so when you draw your lines on the fabric, and I've gone ahead and drawn a second line, as it is in the instructions, you're instructed just to draw one line and then to measure the width of your stitch and add a 1/4 inch, and then draw your second line so that the side to side spacing is as they were designed to be. Of course, you don't have to follow that. You could, if you wanted them further apart, they would still look nested, but they wouldn't be so close together. So that's kind of a personal choice, but it's a good rule of thumb to follow, that if you want them spaced fairly close together, but yet not touching, then you take the width of the stitch and add a 1/4 inch to it. Make sense?
Yes. Did
Okay.
you start left to work to right, or does it really matter?
Yes. Yes, I started on the left mark and worked to the right.
And you're still using the multilateral foot. Okay.
I'm still using the multi-line foot, yes.
Okay. Thanks.
And we can see the width of the stitch by looking at our stitch edit, but that's in millimeters. So
In
is
millimeters.
there an easy way to, can we change it to inches?
You can set your machine for inches. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let me change mine to inches. Maybe.
But it's just as easy to grab a little ruler and measure them.
Well, is the screen accurate? If you, because you have to stitch them out to know.
Probably millimeters are way more accurate than inches.
I'm talking just for this situation.
But you probably, if you left it in millimeters, you'd have to have you'd need a millimeter ruler, and you'd need to know what a quarter of an inch was in millimeters to make your second line.
Right. So I've changed my inches now.
And what did it, okay, on this stitch, what did it tell you your width was?
Well, it says 1.5. Can't possibly be an inch and a half though.
Pardon?
1.5?
1.5? Okay, she's measured, okay.
That would be,
Look at the top of page 5 and on item number 5, okay? She says that she measured from the line to the left, okay? So if I measure from my line to my left, I get 3/4 of an inch.
okay.
And that's, I mean, the right side is going to be the same. So then she added, who drew my lines? She added
Mhm.
1/4 of an inch to that. So she put her second line at an inch. Mine is like 1 1/8 when I
Okay.
drew it.
Good, that's
So
helpful. Thank you.
mine's a little bit further apart.
So you do the left first and then you measure, then you can go from there.
Right, you do one line of your stitches first.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then since this particular one, look at your screen and you see that the cross is at the center of the stitch, and you can see that, you know, the line ends up at the center of your stitch. So you got half on one side and half on the other.
Okay. Well, it is
So
interesting because when I measure it on my screen, it is 1.5. But when, anyway, I'm going to just stitch it, I guess.
well, try it.
Yeah, without adjusting anything.
Well, if it's 1.5, that's the whole thing. Okay.
Right.
And if you make your next line, if it was 1.5, then you would make your next line at 1 3/4.
Right.
And you really, you know, and that would put them way far apart. But since
You want it to
they
nest. Okay.
overlap,
Okay.
you know, you have to look at the stitch and see how it's stitching out to know how far apart to make them so they don't, so there's not an extra space and they're not running into each other.
Okay, got it. But it's really interesting that the screen is actually the actual size. See, I didn't really realize that before. Is that
That's
true?
what it's supposed to be
That's
on both
great.
machines.
Huh, that is really nice.
It's
Okay,
fantastic.
I'm learning lots, as you can tell. Thank you.
I'm glad. Okay, so the little cross and it is in the center, the needle is in the center of the foot. So as we stitch this out, and And I'm not going to stitch out a whole line of them here, just enough to show that they will fit together when we do multiple lines. Okay, now if I want to stop at the end of this, I'm going to hit stitch repeat, and I can't hit, it won't let me do the single stitch program, so it's up to me to stop it. Okay, because that's not a function that's available on the Quilting Stitches. But I am going to use my stitch repeat or stitch restart button, the one up next to the needle up, needle down button, to get me back to the beginning of the pattern before I start my second line. So that's, they fit together very nicely. All right, how's it working out, Lee?
Right. I just need to stop it.
Pardon?
Oh, I just needed to stop it. No, I really like the scissors because it stops it after the stitch. So that's what I needed.
Right.
It's
Okay.
perfect. Thank you.
Great. So if you look at the menu here, you will see that stitches 1 through 10 don't look like they're made to fit together like the one we just did, like number from 11 to the end of the menu, number 22. Those stitches look like they're made to fit together, or at least most of them. Some of them, well, let's look, 11, 12, 13, 21 and 22. The rest of them, probably you're just going to stitch straight lines of them and not try to fit them together. Okay, can you see that? That they look different when they're made to fit together. Okay, so let's try one of these other ones that's made to fit together. In the instruction on page 5, down at the bottom where it says number 1, it says let's try another. The one that she actually stitched out is number 21 on our machines. It's this one. They had number 22 in the instructions. So let's use 21. Okay, which is a stippling stitch, which looks like it goes all over. And this is what I got when I stitched 2 lines of it. So it does fit together also.
Oh, I like that one.
You like that one?
Do.
It's
I
not,
do. And the
it's not
circle here
fast if you're
does
gonna try to do something large.
yeah.
Okay. Now, she says on this one that we can use the single stitch program on this one. And we're using it to make sure that we stay on the straight and narrow, because this one really moves your fabric a lot. All right. So let's try that one, but let's go back. I think we can still use our multi-line foot. If I can get my threads unwound here. So let's try this out here and see how we do. Again, the needle is positioned in the center of the foot, so we're going to start with our needle right on the line. And sorry, we'll see what happens. And I because I'm using the start stop button, I'm keeping my machine speed down, and by keeping it down, I'm having an easier time keeping my lines lined up straight. And yay, I ended up right on the line. So I can go ahead and just start my second repeat. Okay. So now if I've theoretically finished that line of quilting, and I'm ready to move to my second line. And even though, just for my peace of mind and for what I call cheap insurance, I'm going to press my button up here right by my needle up, needle down, my stitch restart button, and make sure I'm at the beginning of my pattern when I start my second row. And I may have gotten my line just a little bit too close.
Judy, are you just making sure you're keeping your red lines parallel to the blue lines?
Are you
Yes,
talking to me?
I'm trying.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's what I'm seeing, because I don't have that foot.
Well, it can be a big help.
I don't have it yet.
Oh, okay. Well, I bet you I know where you can get one. This time I didn't quite end up on the line, so I'm moving my needle over. Not moving my needle, I'm moving my fabric so the line lines up with my needle. So my lines of stitching ended up touching, and that's because I should have had my line a little further apart there. I did a better job yesterday when I was making practice samples. And it's about just 1/8 of an inch wider on the one that I
Yeah,
did yesterday.
it's 2 inches. So that's what I'm trying to figure out now. The second line, figure out where the second line should be then.
All right, if it's 2 inches, then you want your line and probably 1.25 inches away, because you only want half of it, because half is on one side of the line and half is on the other. And you want,
Okay.
if you made it 2 inches away, then they would not overlap here.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
how did you determine how far apart to put your lines?
You're gonna measure how much is on the left side of your line. All
Okay.
right.
Yes.
Okay, and then you're gonna add 1/4 inch. So this is about 1 inch on the left side. So my line is 1.25 inches.
Okay, so you always add 1/4 inch.
If you want them to, depends on what kind of spacing you want in between them.
Those almost
like-
look like ghosts.
Kind of. We turn them this way.
I mean, I can see ghosts in all of them.
But, like this one, what was on the left side was only about 3/4. So then the line was 1 inch apart.
Okay.
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 Did someone else have something?
I think I put 1 inch, but I agree. It should have at least be 1.25 inches for how I would like to have mine done. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I liked it. I like it. Can I ask something? We could do this in the hoop, right?
No.
Oh, you can't do any of this
some,
in the embroidery?
some of these stitches, yes, you can put in the hoop. Some of them you cannot.
Okay. I was just, okay.
But this one you may be able to. I haven't tried it, but some you can and some you can't. All right.
I was thinking if you're only going to contain it to like a certain block size, that's what I was, well, anyway, I might try it sometime. Thanks.
Okay. Do you have the software?
I do.
Okay. Well, then you can use the quilt block thing in the software.
I'm going to try it. Didn't you just have one on the quilt block, I think?
Sometimes it gets incorporated into some of the lessons, yes.
Yeah, I didn't get to do the a week ago. I think it was because it was on a Friday. But anyway, yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to put my multi-line foot away for right now. And we are going to go on to a different category of stitches. These are the 4 direction stitches. Sorry, I called them 4-way stitches, but they're 4 direction stitches, and that makes a difference because we have 8-way and 16-way stitches in the machine, and that's different. Okay, so we want to go to category 9, which is titled additional, and we want to go to subcategory 2 on 9. Now they're 4 direction stitches. If I pick one, and I'm going to pick the one I'm going to use, a couple things happen. First off, your screen looks a little different. You have a cross of these stitches, and one of them is highlighted. You also have at the top of your screen, you have a reverse button. And if you touch that reverse button, you can see it's going to highlight a different arm of this cross of stitches. So, and you have a little green cross that tells you where those stitches begin. So these stitches are made for doing things like sewing a patch on without having to turn your fabric. So if you got a pair of jeans with a rip in them and you want to put a patch on them, you can slide them onto the free arm of your machine and sew all four sides of your patch without ever having to turn that fabric, because what you're doing is you're turning the direction that the stitches are going to stitch. For instance, the one that's highlighted here on the screen, it's going to start at the center of the cross here, and it's going to go from left to right. Once you get it to that corner, then you can either hit your reverse button here or on the head of the machine and then stitch down the side. And again, when you're at the end, touch your reverse button. It will stitch the bottom of row of stitches. When you're finished and hit your reverse button, then it will stitch up to where you started. There is a suggestion that you use that stitch restart button every time you change direction so that it begins at the beginning of the stitch sequence. All right. So if you take a piece of fabric, and I'm going to put my number 8 foot back on here. I believe that's what they tell me. Yeah, like stitch, and she doesn't tell me. All right, so I'm using my number 8 foot. I probably could use my 2A foot because it allows me a 9mm stitch. Notice that on your screen that you can't adjust anything on these stitches. They are what they are, and that's how they're going to stitch. So I'm going to select the stitch that goes from left to right with my thread caught on my foot. Okay. I'm going to sew across the top. So I've got my screen set. So this is the stitch, the arm that's highlighted, the one that's from the center to the right. And then I'm going to position my fabric so that it is, the needle is right at the corner of the fabric. And it's up to me to keep it straight. And it's up to me to stop it when it gets to the corner. So I'm sitting here with my finger on the start-stop button. So now I've stopped it. I'm going to raise my needle and touch my stitch restart. Then I'm going to touch my reverse button on the screen, and now it has switched to the arm of stitches that goes from the center down. And I hit my start stop button, and now I'm sewing from the top down without ever turning my fabric. Oops, one more stitch. Okay, again, raise your needle when you do your change your stitch pattern to the beginning in case it needs to move the needle position. So I'm going to now select, and I shouldn't have turned my fabric, should I? I should, I'm so used to that. Going to select the arm that goes from the center to the left. And I wasn't paying attention to where my fabric was positioned. So my decorative stitch is now inside my fabric instead of on the edge. Okay. One more time, we're going to select the arm that goes from the bottom up. I'm going to restart my stitch pattern. That time it did move the needle. One more. And voila, I've sewn the patch on without ever turning my fabric. And all of the stitches in that menu work that same way. So you can get some fairly decorative looks with that menu of stitches. There's a triple stitch, a single zigzag stitch, a triple zigzag, the honeycomb, the satin, the one we just did, like a blanket stitch, and then an angled blanket stitch, and then this is more of an overlock stitch, number 9. Any questions? Did you successfully sew a patch on your jeans?
Good. Thank you for showing us that.
You're welcome. It's a neat function. It's it can come in really handy when you have something that you can't possibly sew because you can't turn the fabric. But this allows you to have a way to do that. All right. Any questions, comments, ideas about what we've done so far?
This was really neat. This was really neat.
Well, thank you. I don't know if you had a chance to look at the project. Come here, my friend. I thought I was fascinated by the picture. There's quite a bit of use of all of these different stitches in this project. The bag turns out to be pretty good size. I think if you measured it side to side here, it's probably about 10 inches and it's almost 10 inches tall. So it's a good sized bag. And I particularly liked the center panel. So I played with that a bit yesterday. And this is the first one I did. And you're doing 4 different stitches. If you want to look at your instructions, I would like for you on page 2. The instructions call for, excuse me, cutting the fusible fleece in the same sizes as you've cut fabric for the center panel, the outer panels, and the top. But they neglect to tell you on some of them that you should fuse that fleece to your panels before you start stitching on them. So on page 2, where it says creating borders with Maxi stitches, if you would write, that is the center panels. And if you would write in there that you need to fuse the fusible fleece to those pieces of fabric, the two 10-inch by 7-inch pieces, before you start stitching on them. And the instructions say to use 2 layers of stitch in the ditch. Well, 1 layer of our regular tearaway stabilizer will be great. You don't need, the stitch in the ditch is very, very lightweight, almost lighter than typing paper. So that's why I think they've asked for 2 layers, just to give it a little more stability. But you do need to have fused the fusible fleece to your fabric before you start stitching. All right?
Yes.
All right. So the first thing, once you've done that, you're going to draw a line down the center, and you're going to stitch this row of scallops. And those are just in your satin category of stitches. And you will use your mirror function. You will stitch one, then mirror it, stitch the second one, then unmirror it, stitch the third one, and mirror it again to stitch the fourth one. So then you'll have a little serpentine line down the center of your fabric. And then you are to draw a line that kind of echoes that serpentine. That's the one that these green leaves are following. So you make it a little wider, but then you cross where your 2 scallops meet and come to the outside of that one, cross, come to the outside of the third one, cross, and come out to the outside of the fourth one. And that is a decorative stitch, which is on the top of page 4. It's stitch 5.1.7. And that is when you bring that up on your machine. Let me bring it up and show you 5.1.7. Okay. That's just a straight line of stitches. So it's up to you as you're stitching, and I suggest that you use your start stop button and slow your machine down, because you're going to almost constantly be turning your fabric very slowly to keep that row of what is straight. The machine wants to sew straight, to get it to follow that line on your fabric. Questions on that one? All right. So now you have 2 lines of stitching on your fabric, and the next thing you're going to put on there are these flowers, the second set of flowers that we stitched out. The directions say to draw some lines at an angle to position, so that's, you have that line to follow when you sew out that maxi stitch. Well, I had a terrible time trying to get those where I wanted them at the angle that I wanted them. So I decided last night, when I was, after I got in bed, that what I should do would to be take my sample with the straight line, and then I could take that and position it. In fact, if I wanted, I could cut it out so I could really see the outline of it. And then I could use that to decide exactly what angle I wanted my line to be, so my flower didn't end up being tucked up into my leaves any more than I wanted it to. So I did 2 panels and they turned out very differently because I was just drawing the lines kind of at random and didn't realize that I could use a tool that I already had to help me position those. And I only did 3 of them. It's up to you where you put your, you can decide where you put your flowers and how many of them you want. And then the 4th set of designs to put on these center panels is this leaf, which is a maxi leaf. Oh, the other thing I did, and I think that was done on the sample in the instructions, but they don't tell you that, is that when you do them on the right side of this serpentine stitching, you use them as they are, but when you put one or more over on the left side, you can mirror them. So I think they look better if they are mirrored on the left side and left in the original orientation on the right side. So that's what I did when I put the leaves on these. And again, I just kind of drew my lines in random and tried to look at the picture in the instructions, and again was not terribly happy because on the second one I did a worse job than I did on the first one, and I overlapped my leaves onto my flowers. So when I go back to do a real one, I will be using this sample that I've stitched out to say, okay, if I draw a line right here, then this is where my leaf is going to be. And again, I will cut this out so I can see the edges of the design and have more confidence that when I stitch it out, it'll end up where I want it to be rather than overlapping the flowers, which didn't make me happy. Does that make sense?
I think it's a great tip. Thank you.
Okay, so let's see if there's anything else that I found in this project. And oh, on page 6, it's at the top of the page, it's talking about quilting the side panels on the bag, and the stitch that you are at liberty to select any of the quilting stitches that you want. The one that is indicated in the instructions here is not one that I think I would use because it was that one. It was the bubbles. And it depending on the fabric that you use, you may decide to use this one or something else in that quilting set. The other thing that's a little bit different is as you go down page 6 and start, let's see, is that page 6, 7? No, we're going to be on page 7 on number 27. You need to add or want to add a note to fuse the fleece to the wrong side of the top panel pieces, the 2 4x14" pieces. And also it says 2 layers of stabilizer, 1 layer of tearaway is sufficient. All right. And yes, there is bias tape on the edges of that center panel of the bag. right here, there's bias tape. And the reason, other than being a great decoration, the way that they have put that center panel together with the end panels, and I'm going to use these two center panels, is that they have just butted them together and then sewn them with, I believe, a zigzag stitch. Let's see. Yes, they've sewn them together with a zigzag stitch and made the adjustments to it on page 8. So those are just hanging together with the raw edges butted together, and then the bias tape is sewn, and I've got ribbon here, is sewn on top of that to reinforce that seam and hold it together. Much like the Jenny Haskins Jenny join, if you're familiar with that. Any questions on that? And the
So far.
sewing of the bias tape is on page 9. Pardon?
No, not so far.
You're okay, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And the instructions expect you to make your own piping. Does anybody have a question on making the piping? I don't hear anything. And they have instructions in here for making the piping. And they do what I like to do when you sew the cord into the piping the first time. You move the needle to the right, so the cord is actually really loose in there, but you don't, when you go to sew the seam that the piping is in, you'll move the needle position back to 0 so that it snuggles right up to that cording and is tight. And by doing that, there's no chance that that first stitching is going to peek out of the seam where the piping is sewn into, because you've moved it to the inside. All right.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So what can I expound on further or clear up any questions that you have or comments?
This was really a good class for me. It really was. Thank you. And I love that what you're showing right now, the picture. That's a good
Yes.
idea. I never thought of that. I like that. Thank you very much. And I don't mean to be talking all the time. So
That's quite all right, Sandy. You can talk as much as you want. The one thing the comment I have, I like my colors. Let's see. I'll show you what I thought I was going to make the bag out of, and we'll see. Okay. This was my side panel. Okay. So that would have been next to this. And most of these get trimmed down when you make the bag. Okay, that one gets trimmed down. So I tried to pick colors that were in what I was going to use for my side panel. And the instructions indicate that they have used gold metallic for the flowers. And I thought, well, I don't really want gold metallic, but I should have used something that stood out more than the yellow that I used on this fabric. And since I'm going to remake them, then I can revisit that. All right.
yeah, like that real bright, like that orangish one on the butterfly or something, you mean? Is that what you
Um,
mean? Maybe something like that?
maybe,
that what you
yeah,
mean?
something that's darker, or, I don't know, I might switch to the metallic, but I doubt it, which would stitch fine, but this is my piping.
Oh,
It's a
wow.
good thing there's only just a little bit of it. And then this was my top panel and lining. So, and then I have the green. The green was going to be my replacement for bias tape, the green ribbon. And I have a
I like
pink.
the green. I like the green.
I have a pink zipper.
Oh, I took, yeah.
Looks
But
pretty. Fun. Judy, I need to go. But thank you.
well, thank you, Lee, for being here. And I'm sure if you make a bag, it'll be gorgeous, and I'd love to see it.
Okay. Thank you. I enjoyed learning about all this stuff.
Good. Great.
See you later.
Thank you for being here.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Have a good weekend or week. I don't even know what day it is.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, ladies, for being here. If you have no more questions, I think we are finished for today.
Thank you so
And
much.
thank you for being here, Sandy. I appreciate it. Someday maybe we can get to see you in person. And Miss Peggy, thank you for being here. And so I think we're done until we will be back with tech class in November, and it will be a week late because of Karen's visit. So thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye, Sandy. Okay. Bye, Miss Peggy.